1.85 milliseconds. That's how quickly the XL2586X refreshes each frame when running at 540 Hz. And so if you're playing an esports title like Valorant, CS2, Siege, where you can get those frames, 1, it has very little ghosting, and 2, because of the insanely low balls to the walls time it takes to go from one frame to the next, that makes the XL2586X one of the least persistent, if not the least persistent consumer monitor that you can buy. Now, quickly, if you're not familiar, persistence is how long an image is retained on screen. The lower the refresh rate, the more persistent because it takes longer to go from one frame to the next. The higher the refresh rate, the less persistent because it has less screen time. And when you compare the 540Hz model to its 360Hz older brother with like-to-like settings, apart from the refresh rates being set to their maximum, you can clearly see the difference the extra 180Hz gives you. There's also DIAC, which is Zowie's branding for their black frame insertion, or BFI tech. It's a feature that strobes the image by inserting a black frame in between each regular frame, shortening the amount of time a regular frame is displayed on screen. On the 360Hz model, it's called DIAC Plus, and on the 540Hz model, it's DIAC 2. But when enabled, the incredibly low number of 1.85 milliseconds it takes for the 540Hz model to change from one frame to the next goes even lower, hence the clearer moving image. Now, if I'm being honest, the BFI on the 360Hz model was bad. Not even just when I'm comparing it to the 540Hz model, but when compared to many other monitors back when it came out. It's clear how much better DIAC 2 is compared to DIAC Plus. It's easier to see it working at lower frames because it's either blur or clarity, but at 540Hz, persistence is already so good that I could not tell whether it was on or off. Which isn't to say it's useless. Better performance is just better than not having it. And even if it just marginally helps, in tournaments where you compete for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars, sometimes marginal is the difference between winning and being like everybody else. A loser. Now, I've been using this for over a month, and it wasn't until I started writing the script for this video that I realized I didn't know how much it cost, because this is a review unit. But I knew it wasn't going to be cheap. I was thinking maybe around $600, $700, but no, $1,000. For a 1080p TN panel. I was actually shocked. So then I thought to myself, what other monitors like this exist, and how do they compare in price and performance? So I managed to grab an Alienware AW2524HF and the LG 32GS95UE-B, which couldn't be any more different than the Zowie. The LG cost even more at $1,400, but has an OLED panel that can do 4K 240Hz and 1080p 480Hz with the push of a button. The Dell, on the other hand, has an overclocked 500Hz IPS panel and costs $600 on Dell's website, and $600 on Amazon with a fake discount, as shown by the price history. Now, when I brought the LG into this comparison, I thought that it would be the clear winner. But as it turns out, it's not that clear. No pun intended. The Zowie has the best clarity thanks to its BFI tech, something the Alienware and LG do not have. But the LG has by far the best response times, as you could see by the lack of trailing. We're talking 0.75 milliseconds of response times. And despite the poor overshoot results, you can't see any of the overshoot because this thing is so within compliance, which means that the 0.75 millisecond response time is well within the refresh window of 2.08 milliseconds, so it doesn't even matter if it overshoots because it can correct itself well before the refresh window. The same applies throughout any refresh rate. The LG has the best response times, the Zowie has the best clarity, and the Alienware is just there, existing. And the overdrive settings on this Alienware model don't really do much. Increasing the overdrive does technically give it better performance, but if you're maintaining at least 240 FPS, it's so marginal that it doesn't even matter what you really change it to. As for the LG, there are no settings to change, and it manages no more than 0.79 milliseconds all the way down to 120 Hz, where it finally goes just above 1 millisecond at 60 Hz. That's nearly half of the response time of the Zowie at 540 Hz with its best overdrive setting. But let's quickly revisit one of the pictures from earlier. When I saw the Zowie and LG side by side, I couldn't conclusively say which one I'd go for. I was constantly going back and forth in my mind about which one was better. On one hand, clarity is nice, but on the other hand, so is no ghosting. So then I did a little test to help me narrow down which one I think is best. I put the Zowie and LG side by side, set the Zowie to its best setting at 540Hz, shot a slow motion video of my character's wobbly head, and rewatched it. And unfortunately for the Zowie, it doesn't seem to be any match for the LG. Throughout this slow motion video, the Zowie consistently has more double images than the LG, which causes text from the previous frame, or frames, to cover or merge with the current frame, making text harder to read and edges harder to discern. On top of that, because the clarity of the LG was already so good without BFI, I actually couldn't even tell if the Zowie was supposed to be clearer while watching it in slow motion. That doesn't mean that all hope is lost for the Zowie though, as it crushes the Alienware in the same test. And while we're on the subject of testing, one of the marketing points I saw on Zowie's website for this product was that your vision will come back sooner after being flashbanged. I'm not sure what their testing environment was, nor what settings they used on the Zowie, but I had all monitors to their max refresh rate and max brightness, and the Zowie lost to the LG and the Alienware. And what I'm showing you in slow motion was even noticeable in person in real time, just obviously not as much. It was very minimal, but I think that it could be beneficial at times, even if those times are rare. So based on my testing and experience, Zowie kind of shot themselves in the foot, at least in the flashbang test. Input lag is incredible on all three of these monitors and are just the top of their game. The Zowie and the Alienware are around 1.5 milliseconds, and the LG is slightly slower. But even though the LG is slower, you absolutely won't notice that difference unless you're literally Superman. They feel equally instant, and at the risk of sounding weird, they feel like an extension of my body. Any button I press or any mouse movement I make is so instant that it feels like a limb or something. I don't know. Basically, hand do stuff, monitor show stuff hand do in same femtosecond. Now, the biggest question I had for a 0.5 kilohertz monitor is, and I bet you're also wondering, is there a noticeable difference between 360Hz and 540Hz? Yes, but also no. To see if I actually noticed a difference, instead of just pretending and fooling myself thinking that I actually did, I had my wife randomly choose between 360Hz and 540Hz on the XL2586X. I left the room in between tests, so I couldn't see what she was doing or listen to how many mouse clicks she made. Then I moved my cursor in circles to see if I could tell the difference, and I managed to get it right 9 out of 10 times. There were a few times where I wasn't 100% sure on my answer, but was still like 75% sure. She also had some fun throwing a curveball with the last one, putting it to 240Hz, but unfortunately for her, I easily picked that up, so no fun for her. So the difference from 240Hz to 360Hz to 540Hz is noticeable when I'm moving a cursor in circles. In game, I was hyper-focused, so I didn't really notice any difference between 360 and 540Hz because I wasn't looking for it. And I don't know if I have to look for it and notice it to take advantage of it, but I don't think I do. As long as my eyes can see the difference, then surely I can see it in game even if I don't realize it, right? Well, I don't know, but I'd like to think that's how it works. Also, the difference when going from 240Hz to 360Hz, then 360Hz to 540Hz was not that noticeable to me. It's when I went back down from 540Hz to 240Hz that I thought, wow, 240Hz is slow. Which is a weird thing to say, but weirder things have been said, such as,
the human eye can't see past 60 FPS.
Going from 540Hz to 240Hz didn't give me the same feeling as going from 120 to 60 though, because 60Hz is really slow. But to my eyes, it was obvious that 540Hz was clearly giving my eyes more information than 240Hz, even in game. So overall, I'd say that if you're running a 240Hz monitor and you're looking at a 0.5 kilohertz monitor, then it's probably worth the upgrade, especially if you are hyper competitive. But if you already have a 360Hz monitor that's really good, then it makes less sense, but if you can take advantage of a return policy, it is worth trying for yourself. Okay, let's move on to the Zowie's color performance. Brightness was good, and it maintains its high brightness even with BFI on, which is something not many monitors can do. Unfortunately for the Zowie, that's about the only good things I could say about it in this segment because the rest of the stuff is, to say it lightly, not good. It doesn't have wide gamut support, the contrast ratios were average when tested, and even worse in person, likely due to it being a TN panel. It has poor viewing angles, uniformity was fine, gamma was poor, grays leaned towards a cooler color temperature, And color reproduction out of the box was so goofy that when I right-clicked a player in old school RuneScape that had a slightly lower combat level than me, their combat level, which was supposed to be a light green, looked straight up yellow. I was actually confused and thought I lost a few combat levels somehow. You can fix it by playing with the color settings, but I don't think this should be the standard colors out of the box. In contrast, the LG and Alienware were great all-arounders, having great viewing angles, good brightness, good out-of-the-box color accuracy for the LG, and incredible results for the Alienware. And the LG has wide gamut support, a great HDR experience, and inky OLED blacks for infinite contrast ratios. The Alienware has none of that. Now, there is more to the Zowie than just pixel response times and low persistence. Being that it's dedicated towards esports, it has a couple of other nice features which help with its E-Sportiness. For example, there are positioning lines for swivel and height, so you know exactly how to set up your monitor when moving this from LAN event to LAN event. I imagine this is a crucial feature. I can't speak for anyone else, but I think it's safe to say this is important for anybody who travels with their monitors. Inside the stand are industrial grade bearings, according to Zowie. I can't confirm if they're industrial grade, but the sliding action is incredibly smooth and quiet, so I believe them. There's a handle on top of the stand to carry it around, and I gotta say, it really makes it the easiest monitor to lug around. To hold the Alienware, you have to hold it by the stand, which makes it front heavy and awkward, and don't even get me started on the LG. You get shielding hoods to minimize glare from other lights, and an OSD remote which Zowie calls the S-switch, which is one of the ways to adjust the OSD. You can use the nipple on the back, but the remote is easier and saves up to 3 profiles for easy switching. If you don't want to deal with any of that, there's software you can download from the Zowie support page that switches profiles for you automatically based on the application on the foreground. You'll have to set it up though, but once it's set up, you'll never have to do anything. The Dell and LG also have similar software. Okay, so my final thoughts on the XL2586X. I've been struggling for literal hours trying to conclude this video. On one hand, I love the Zowie. It has a charm to it that the LG and Alienware don't have, but that's probably just nostalgia. This has been on my desk for over a month, and every time I look at it, it reminds me of my CSGO days back in 2017 when I was using the 240Hz XL2540, trying to get into the ESEA Mountain Dew League. Back then, Zowie releasing a monitor with bezels thicker than a cheesecake from the Cheesecake Factory, and a design akin to a current generation main battle tank were in stark contrast to what the rest of the industry was trying to achieve, which was sleek and bezel-less. But Zowie didn't care. They knew their panel was the best for esports at the time, which benefited them because the industry was growing rapidly at the time. And because of that, they were able to charge $500 for it because it was the best. But it's 2024, OLEDs for monitors are here and becoming more common, and it seems to be the best thing since sliced bread. And if you're a monitor and your only moat is esports gaming and you're going up against something like the LG, you're gonna have a tough time when trying to grab the attention of people looking for the best. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider the Zowie and just go straight for the LG, because it's still one of the best monitors you could buy for esports. It's just hard to recommend at $1,000 given that seemingly the LG is better and this only focuses on doing one thing well. So I guess I'll just say this, if you don't care about media consumption and creation and just want an awesome monitor for esports gaming with sweet BFI, easy travel and setup capabilities, and are okay with spending 1G for a 1080p TN panel, then go for the Zowie because it is awesome. But if you just want the best for gaming, or want a monitor that can do it all, which you likely care about if you're a single monitor user, and you're okay with spending $400 more, then you'll probably like the LG more. You just have to weigh the pros and cons for your situation and figure out what works best for you. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, every day. Peace.